All right, this will probably be a shorter video and maybe in a different vein, but I've gotten some questions about curriculum, so I thought I would address them um, in this matter. Um, I think some people are often looking for like perfect curriculum and just the right thing that kind of does everything they need it to do. And as a teacher, I don't know if that exists. So I want to talk about kind of some principles as far as whether you're homeschooling or whether you're at class and kind of how I solve those problems or how I look at those problems. The first question that I have is what do you want to accomplish with Latin? Some people I've gotten emails from, I'm in law school and so I want to learn legal terms, or I'm in med school, I want to learn medical terms, or whatever it is. For our program at the school where I teach at, our goal is to read Cicero, Caesar, Virgil, those kinds of things. So the goal is to read. So that impacts, or it should impact, the curriculum that we choose. Another thing that I think you should ask is how long are they going to learn, or at what age are they going to learn? For example, Wheelock's Latin, which I like, and I have a high schooler who's just learning Latin for the first time. She actually is doing Greek and Latin simultaneously. So Wheelock's works really well for her because she's doing Greek, and so she's got the Greek grammar supplementing her Latin grammar. So it works really well. This is a great high school or college text. I love it. It's got primary sentences right off the bat pretty much. And I love to have my students memorize poetry or quotes or things like that they can kind of take with them through the day. So I like Wheelock, but we actually don't use that at my school, and I stay away from it for the most part because we start teaching in Latin in third grade. And so for those third and fourth grade years, we actually have written our own book to use that really helps students with a couple basic kind of fundamental things like case and person and number in verbs. So basically for those 2 years, we're really using Latin to supplement some English grammar issues. And then hopefully they'll be ready for fifth grade. So when they hit fifth grade, we use the Oxford Latin curriculum. I'm not getting sponsored by Oxford or whatever, but that'd be awesome. If you do want to sponsor me, email. Anyway, so we use these books, and we actually, starting with book 1, and then 2 is yellow, and then 3 is blue, we spread them out over 4 years. So 5th to 8th grade, we actually use those books over the 4 years. So they get about 9 chapters a year. That's kind of arbitrary. There's so many curriculum out there. I almost pulled out all my curriculum from my cabinet because basically I just pick it up. Whenever I see curriculum, I pick it up. And the main thing that I do as a teacher, which is going to get me to one of the big principles I want to talk about, once you have your goals and once you know the content, the stuff that they need to master, curriculum's just, it's almost incidental. You want to find a curriculum that covers the content that you want them to learn, but that's kind of secondary to, all right, what are the goals? So for example, every student needs to learn the uses of the ablative. Ablative of place where, ablative of time when, ablative of time within which, ablative of price, so there are all these ablative of means, blah, 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 right? There's so many of these things. And any good curriculum is going to take you through those things eventually. So you kind of want to figure, all right, how old are the students? What can they handle? When can they handle it? And then does the book do a good job? So one of the things, for example, I like about the Oxford curriculum is they kind of take one consistent story and take it all the way through all 3 years, finishing with Horace's poetry. And so you get to the second year, for us is the last year of 8th grade, and we just start memorizing Horace's poem, De Fugere Nives. So as the book's ending up and as the grammar's ending up, they're memorizing that poetry that illustrates some of the things that we want them to memorize leading into their 9th and 10th grade years, which are primary source, completely primary source based. I picked up Jenny's first year Latin. I know, obviously people use this. And what I do oftentimes with curriculum is I'd like to see if there's any gaps that's in curriculum, the Oxford curriculum, say, and what are they doing, especially exercises. I think exercises are one of the things that that teachers really need to be aware of variety. for example, one of the things I love that Oxford does is they have plays in their books. So I do, like the students are required for test grades, they memorize the plays and they have to act out the plays. In the group or the actors that do the best, I give them Oscars in Latin. So they have these little kind of stupid little things, but they're Oscars in Latin, and I put the Oscar in a toga. And anyway, so it's just stuff that changes it up. And there are some students who hate that, and then there are students who love it, and it forces them to memorize the vocab and to it just brings a different element into class. So I think that's helpful. So when I go through curriculum, I'm looking for exercises. Actually, it's one of the main things that I do with curriculum is there something clever they're doing? Is there something different, something I haven't seen? And for the most part, there's not, but I just like to try to look out for it. And that goes the same thing with other languages. It could be Spanish. I taught Spanish and Hebrew and Greek and kind of all the many different languages. And so I'm always looking for different types of activities that can reinforce some kind of core standards, cases and moods and tenses and blah, blah, blah. So all these different things that every student needs to learn, and then just picking a curriculum based on that. So I really like the Oxford curriculum. I think it works really well for me in some ways with 5th through 8th grade, which is what that's where I use it. That's where I teach it. But then there's some things that I think it's weak in. And so as I go through the book, let me see if I can find one of my cards. As I go through the book, I actually have a checklist. Oh, doesn't look like it's here. It might be over there. It's over there. I'll walk off camera and get it. But I have just goals that I write up that I want all my students to be aware of. And then I give them a typed copy for the next year. So my 6th graders, that are my 5th graders now, they'll get a typed up. These are for the 9 or 10 chapters we covered as 5th graders, these are the things you must know. And so it holds them responsible from year 1 to year 2. But some of them would be pronunciation, the nominative case, how to parse would be my chapter 1 goals. Accusative, the adjective rule, adjectives always match the nouns they modify, and gender, case, and number. So they're just different things that it doesn't matter what book I'm using, those would be the same principles that I would bring through to my students. And so that's a big, that's a big part of it. Those goals, if you don't have them, or you maybe you're not a specialist in Latin or something like that, you could go to say like the National Latin Exam. You can just Google that, National Latin Exam, and they'll have kind of the standards, their sheets. Oh, I do have that right here. They'll have their sheets of like, this is what a Latin 3 class should cover. And so it'll go through, you should cover deponent verbs and irregular, fio, malo, wallo, nolo, impersonal verbs like aportet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, they go through all of the things that a kind of a standard 3rd year student to take the National Latin Exams should know. So that stuff, I think it's helpful. Again, I don't think you're ever going to find a perfect curriculum. As a guy who's written 2 years worth of curriculum, there's just not a perfect curriculum. There's going to be some weaknesses. And so you want to supplement it, and you want to think through what are your goals. For those of you who are doing Latin independently, if you're old enough and you've done something like Greek, I would recommend Wheelock's Latin. It's, at least in North America, it's kind of the standard. I like it, but at the same time, if you don't have linguistic background, it can be really tough because it's like one chapter. Oh, here's 6 cases, and anyway, so it can be different. Another thing that I get asked about is dictionaries. So here are the 2 dictionaries that we work with in the middle school age up to, so that would be like 3rd to 8th grade. They're required to have the Oxford Latin Dictionary. Oops, there we go. Excuse me. And then in high school, I use Chambers-Murray. The reason being, it just goes a little more in depth, and it's the kind of thing if they were going to go study at college or beyond, it's got enough depth that it could kind of take them beyond. Oxford kind of looks a little nicer. It looks a little neater. Doesn't scare 3rd graders as much, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's got, even the maps in the background, mythological names, some things that can be really helpful to students who maybe don't have all the things that we would expect, or I would expect my high school students to have. So I hope that helps. I know this was quick, but those are some of my thoughts on curriculum. And I think, again, just to reemphasize, what you really want are clear goals for your students. What you really want is a clear, even just a check-off sheet of they have this mastered or they don't have that mastered. And that's kind of even how I end my classes will be, they need to be able to parse things or decline things or conjugate things. And that's really a day-by-day the teacher needs to have a very clear understanding of what students have and don't have. So those are my thoughts on curriculum. I hope that helps. And yeah, that's it. I'll hopefully be putting up a couple more videos in the next couple of days. But cheerio. Bye-bye.